I'm sure you remember your government class from back in high school, or civics class, we called it in California. It's where you learned about the structure of our government, right? How the founders put forth in the Constitution a separation of powers, some checks and balances. Maybe you just remember it from Schoolhouse Rock. That's okay. It worked. But right now, we don't have those checks and balances in Washington, D.C. The Democrats run the House, they run the Senate, and they run the White House. So where is the accountability? Where's the checks and balance? It's coming from the states. Yeah, our founders thought of that, too. And really, it's coming from the attorneys general in certain states who are holding the administration accountable on a regular basis. One of the finest attorneys general who's really been fighting this fight is Ken Paxton in the great state of Texas, and he joins us now. Mr. Attorney General, thanks for being here.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with your fight over your southern border. I mean, this is very serious in Texas, probably more serious in your state than any other along that southern border. And really, what happened when the Biden administration began is that they just stopped enforcing our laws. How bad is it down there because of this?
It's as bad as it's ever been. As a matter of fact, day one, when Joe Biden started, he said he wasn't going to enforce deportation of illegals. So he sent a signal to everyone that wanted to come here, including the cartels. If you can get as many people here as possible, cartels can make 8,000 to 12,000 a person, and cartels know that the border's wide open for drugs. So there's a tacit agreement between the cartels and the Biden administration, and the Biden administration is leveraging the work and the ability to profit with the cartels.
Well, and I saw you recently at President Trump's rally. You made some remarks about this, and I think you said that you don't think this is an accident. I'd love for you to explain that a little bit more. You think this was deliberate from the Biden administration?
Oh, yeah, I think they absolutely want this. I mean, they looked at Donald Trump's success, and we had cut immigration significantly to the lowest levels, I think, in decades, by starting to build the wall and by cutting off catch and release, by enforcing Title 42 related to health restrictions, and by enforcing Remain in Mexico, where you couldn't just come in and claim asylum and disappear into our country. All of those worked. And the Biden administration dismantled every possible federal law. They just ignored these federal laws that they're supposed to enforce. And therefore, they are getting the results they want, which is the largest numbers of people crossing the border the first year he was in office, and now the numbers are even higher. So it's getting worse and worse. And the impact is tremendous in Texas and Arizona and the other border states. It's a bad thing.
And I'd love to drill down on the real human impact here, because I'm told if I say we want our border enforced that I'm not being compassionate to people who are coming here for a better life. I'm told that when your governor, Greg Abbott, buses people to New York or D.C., he's using these individuals as political pawns. But talk about political pawns for a moment. People are dying on the border. You've got morgues that are overflowing right now because of these policies. Where's the compassion there?
Well, there's no mention of that. As a matter of fact, they know for a fact, just because it keeps happening, that people are going to die on the way here from dehydration, drownings, from hiding in trucks where they end up suffocating and dying of heat exhaustion. That doesn't count the over 100,000 people that are dying from fentanyl overdoses or drug overdoses in our country that are directly related to the border and the Border Patrol not being able to enforce our drug laws. So there are going to be thousands of people dying. The Biden administration knows it again. So this is a purposeful policy on their part. They're willing to trade these deaths, whether they're children, migrants, it doesn't matter, Americans, it doesn't matter. They are willing to trade to get these illegals here.
Yeah, and what is the end game here? When you say this is a plan and this is the result they want, is it just to get as many people in here, force the issue of so-called comprehensive immigration reform that then has a pathway to citizenship, so everyone who's come here illegally is now a voter? Is it that diabolical and that cynical?
Absolutely, it is. I think Kamala's even said it, that she wants a pathway to citizenship because the president wants it. So there's no doubt they want to get these people in Republican states so that it becomes a one-party ruling class and there's no competition. They also want to hurt Republican states because there's large costs to all of these people coming into our state. Think about it. We're having over 5,000 people coming in a day. New York was complaining about a few hundred.
Yeah.
D.C. a few thousand, Martha's Vineyard 50, Chicago a few hundred. They were overwhelmed, state of emergency. We're dealing 5,000 a day. That has a tremendous economic and social cost to our state. And I think that's very purposeful by the Biden administration because the Republican states have been successful and they want to do what they can to harm us.
Can you give us a quick update on the various federal lawsuits that you and some of your other counterparts in other states have been able to file, argue, and win in some cases over the border problems?
Yeah, the most hard to believe. We filed one over stopping criminals from coming into the country. The Biden administration was open to having as many criminals come to our country as possible. These other countries were opening their prisons, letting people come up the border, and we've had to stop them. We've so far been able to stop them, but they really want to get these criminals in our country. You wonder how is that even possible if they'd want this, but this is something that they do want. We've also continued to enforce Title 42, the health restrictions. We've got a lawsuit of the border wall that Congress appropriated the money, and we're trying to force the administration to spend it the way Congress appropriated it. But this is a constant struggle. They're ignoring federal law every single day, not just ignoring it, but violating it in direct opposition, and they're in violation of their constitutional role to enforce federal law.
I'd love to pivot a bit here, because here in Washington, D.C., we all recognize that big tech has basically taken over the free flow of political speech and thought and expression in this country. If you can't speak your mind on social media, or if you can't find information on Google or other search platforms, you're basically limited in your participation as a citizen. No one in D.C. seems to really care about it or have the stomach to do anything about it. What can you do as Attorney General of Texas?
Well, look, we're continuing to look at big tech. We've got, I think, 4 lawsuits against Google. We have 1 against Facebook. We're investigating Twitter. So I have a real concern about what they're doing. They're violating state law. We already sued them over that. They're stealing our facial geometry, which is illegal in Texas. They're capturing information about all of us, and they're monetizing it, making billions off of consumers without informing them that they're using their data. And they actually deceptively say that if you could turn off tracking and that you can protect yourself from them tracking your location and information, and yet they're capturing all of this information and they're profiting off of it.
What do you say to people who listen? I believe in the free market. I believe in competition. I'm lean libertarian on a lot of those issues, Attorney General Paxton. What do you say to those who will say, hey, listen, they built their Google. They can run it however they want. They built their. You don't like it? Build your own Google. Build your own Twitter, but don't regulate them.
Well, so a couple of things. One is that they've used anti-competitive practices, so there's a monopoly. So there is not a free exchange of ideas, because they control it by crushing the competition using illegal and anti-competitive means to do it. In addition, they got special legislation passed, and it's called Section 230, and they have used that to argue that they're not a publisher. They're just a place for people to have free speech and post their information, and therefore they're protected because they don't control what goes on there. Well, now they're controlling what goes on there, and so they get these special protections. They can't get sued because they're not a publisher, but then they're acting like a publisher, so they can't have their cake and eat it too. They can't have the special protections where they can't get sued because they're not controlling what goes on their platforms, when actually they are controlling. Then they either need to be treated like everybody else, where they can be sued for what they put on there like everybody else, and they have to avail it. They can't avail themselves of Section 230. They can't have it both ways.
Yeah, finally, we've only got a minute left, but I know that early voting is already underway. You're up for re-election in just 13 days. I was told by the Biden administration and by the mass media and by big sports organizations that Texas is engaged in racist voter suppression. Can you give us an update on how your new voter integrity laws are going?
That's code for they're worried the Republicans are going to win. There's plenty of people voting. We only have. I'll have later today the second day voting, but the first day we had I think over 500,000 people vote in Texas. So that's one day of 12 days of early voting, and then of course we have election day. So we're off to a very good start. We have 17 million registered voters in Texas, and I think we're going to see a pretty good turnout.
And should you win re-election in 2 weeks, do you have any future lawsuits against the Biden administration that you're contemplating that you want to give us a little peek at?
Well, we've got a lot that we're looking at. I do not want to disclose right now what we're going to do, because we're in the process of reviewing all kinds of things. We're looking at some of these mandates that are coming out as it relates to potentially COVID and our children. We're looking at loan forgiveness issues. So there's all kinds of issues we're considering.
All right.
The election.
Well, that's no fun, but if you're ready to announce, you know where to come find us right here on O'Connor Tonight. Thanks, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
More to come on O'Connor Tonight.